Hi, my name is Charlie Steinberg. I am the Humane Education Manager here at Mews Animal Foundation, and today we are going to be talking about the not-so-nocturnal behaviors our cats may be exhibiting. How many of you have been told or just kind of assumed that cats are nocturnal? Like, that's just a cat thing, they are nighttime creatures. That's actually a really common misconception, and it causes a lot of frustration for cat owners. If you believe your cat is nocturnal, you're kind of just accepting the chaos as a fact of life. But cats are not nocturnal. They're crepuscular, meaning they're most active at dusk and dawn, not the whole night. And that distinction actually matters, because once you understand when and why your cat is active, you have a lot more tools to work with. A little context before we get into the behaviors. Cats have only recently become indoor animals. Kitty litter wasn't even invented until the 1950s. Before that, cats were largely outdoor animals with outdoor schedules. Bringing them inside has been really good for their health overall as a species, but it's also created an interesting tension because their internal clocks are still running on an outdoor schedule, and that schedule doesn't always align with ours. They're still predators, they still have a prey drive, and when they don't have natural ways to express that, it tends to come out sideways, usually between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. What I want you to take away from this video isn't that this is just a cat thing you have to live with. The goal is to become an investigator. What is your cat doing and why? Because the why changes everything, and I do want to be upfront. Most of what we'll talk about in this video isn't going to happen overnight or in one day. This is all about building a better routine over time and being patient with both your cat and yourself in the process. So let's talk behaviors. I want to go through some of the most common things we hear from cat owners about what their cats are doing at night and give you a little context for each one. The zoomies. You know this one. Your cat suddenly sprints through the house like they've been launched from a cannon. This is prey drive with nowhere to go. It's completely normal, and it tends to be most intense right at dusk, which tracks with what we know about their biology. They are gearing up for a hunt. The furry alarm clock, pawing at your face, sitting on your chest, walking across you like your furniture. This is your cat using you as a tool to get their day started. Excess vocalizing. Yowling, chirping, chattering, often aimed at a window or a closed door. Most of the time, this is a response to something they've spotted outside. Another cat, a bird, a raccoon. It's worth paying attention to, though, because in older cats, increased nighttime vocalization can sometimes be a sign of cognitive changes. When in doubt, mention it to your vet. And the demolition crew, knocking things off shelves, scratching furniture, general mayhem, usually curiosity or attention seeking. If they've ever gotten a reaction out of you by doing it, they've learned that it works and they're going to double down. A few more here. Door scratching. Cats genuinely don't love closed doors, especially if they're used to having access to an entire open space. This isn't always about wanting you specifically, it's often about territory and simple access. The door itself is the problem. Foot attacks. Those lumps moving under the blanket are, to your cat, very slow and very tempting prey. This is just instinct. It's time to eat. If you feed on a schedule, you've probably noticed your cat's energy ramps up across the board in the lead up to mealtime. A 2019 study out of France tracked cat activity patterns over 7 days and found that one of the most consistent activity spikes happened right before scheduled feeding time. Your cat knows exactly what time dinner is, and they're not subtle about it. And the overnight social club. For multi-cat households, sometimes the noise isn't distress at all. It's play, grooming, wrestling. Sweet in theory, less sweet at 2 a.m. So why dusk and dawn specifically? Let's get a little into the science here. At dusk, as light levels drop, cats get something like a biological green light. Their eyes are built for low light conditions in a way that ours simply are not. They have a reflective layer behind their retinas that amplifies available light significantly, and their internal clocks, driven by light-sensitive cells that work similarly to the ones that regulate human circadian rhythms, are essentially signaling that it's prime hunting time. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. Small prey animals tend to be the most active and least vigilant at dusk. That's the optimal window to hunt. Then at dawn, there's a second surge. Again, this mirrors the behavior of prey animals, which become active again at first light. Your cat has had a full night of activity and is often motivated for one final hunt before they crash for the day. Research out of Michigan State published earlier this year tracked activity patterns in shelter cats across different lighting conditions. What they found was that regardless of whether the cats were under standard LED lighting, dim lighting, or a warm orange light designed to reduce blue wavelengths, every single cat still showed a consistent activity peak at the moment the lights came on. The cue that triggered it wasn't the type of light, it was the transition itself. That tells us the biology is deeply ingrained, not just a response to brightness. This is kind of good news though, because research also shows these rhythms are flexible. They're shaped significantly by feeding schedules, human activity patterns, and environmental cues, which means there's a lot you can actually do. Quick fun fact before we move into solutions, that reflective layer we just mentioned, it's called the tapetum lucidum. It's also responsible for that glowing eye effect you get in photos of cats. That's not a camera artifact. That's the tapetum lucidum bouncing light back through the retina a second time to maximize what the eye can pick up. So now that we know what our cats are doing and why, let's talk about how to actually address those behaviors. The most important first step is to identify the right behavior. Not just, my cat is being bad at night. What specifically is your cat doing and in what context? A cat vocalizing by your closed bedroom door is a different problem than a cat vocalizing by a window at 2 a.m. They may need completely different solutions. The second thing I want to name, and this one matters a lot, we're all a little worse at handling frustration when we're sleep deprived. That's just human, but we need to be really careful not to take that out on our cats. Punishment isn't going to help here, and it can actually make things worse by introducing anxiety into the relationship. What the research actually supports is the opposite approach, finding the why behind the behavior and then working with your cat rather than against them. So here are some things that actually work. Visual barriers. Out of sight often means out of mind. If your cat is vocalizing at windows because they can see outside animals, closing the blinds or curtains overnight can make a significant difference. Access control. If your cat is causing chaos in a particular room, limiting access can help. Just be aware that restricting access to one space can sometimes increase escape-related behaviors in others. This is especially worth thinking through in smaller homes or apartments where you don't have a lot of rooms to work with. This is not the right solution for everybody, but for some households, it can make a real difference. A structured play session before bed. This one is probably the most consistently supported interventions in the research. The idea is to engage your cat's prey drive intentionally before you go to sleep. Let them go through the full hunt, catch, eat sequence, and then wind down. A 2024 study found that cats in enriched environments had nearly half the cortisol levels of cats without enrichment. Cortisol is a stress hormone, so lower levels mean less stressed cats. Structured play counts as enrichment, which means it's doing double duty, wearing them out and keeping them calmer overall. An automatic feeder set for early morning. If the furry alarm clock is your main problem, taking yourself out of the equation by letting a machine handle that first meal can be really effective. Puzzle feeders and enrichment toys give cats a mentally engaging way to spend that overnight energy, especially if you have a cat that tends towards the demolition crew end of the spectrum. White noise. Particularly useful for window vocalizers. Muffling the sounds coming in from outside can reduce the triggering stimulus significantly. Sometimes, though, blocking out the outside world isn't realistic or it isn't working. In that case, it can help to go in the opposite direction entirely and give your cat a designated spot to observe from instead. Cat trees and window perches give cats that sanctioned high spot to observe from, which satisfies their instinct, and it redirects the energy to a specific place. A 2015 study on cats in novel environments found that access to vertical climbing structures and hiding spots measurably reduced stress-related behaviors. And finally, a consistent evening routine. Research consistently showed that feeding schedules and human activity pattern was among the strongest timing cues for cat behavior. If you wind down the same way every night, your cat is going to start reading those signals and adapt to them over time. All of the sources I referenced in this video, along with any further reading, will be in the video description below. If you have any questions, something that clicked, or a story about your cat's overnight chaos, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear what your cats are getting up to and whether any of this was helpful. And if you did find this useful, consider sharing it with someone whose cat is keeping them up at night. There are a lot of us out there. Thanks for watching. My name is Charlie again, and we will see you in the next one.